Can you test the mic? Just say test or something in it.
Hello. Woo. Hey, Scott. Okay, this is mic 14. And then this is the second mic. It's a little lower, this one. Or was it Michelle? Michelle.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Okay, if everybody could sit down and get ready, we're going to start the show. Aloha, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to Deaf Awareness Day. This is a special event that's first time in history in Hawaii, finally. Thank you all for coming today. Before we start, I'm going to tell you where the restrooms are. They're in the back. We have a few presentations before lunch, and then we will have a deaf panel up here. And then after that, we will have Deaf Museum in the back that you can look at. And again, I thank you all for coming. We're going to start the program by saying thank you to all of you for coming here, and thank my staff, my DCAB staff, for supporting this event. Thank you to Ed Chevy for all of the work that he did with the history in the museum in the back. There's a lot of rich information back there. It's wonderful. Now we're going to start with our first presenter, Charlotte Townsend. This is her sign name. And she's chair on the DCAB board.
Hi, good morning.
Hold on.
I can talk very loud. I'm so sorry. Okay, turn off phone first thing. Thank you very much. Third thing, microphone. Okay, can you hear me now? All right, let me start again. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Deaf Awareness Day 2025. As you already know, my name is Charlotte Townsend, and I am the current chair of the Disability and Communication Access Board. Pono and Christine are all staff of our DCAB office, and we've sponsored this event today, and we're very grateful for your attendance. I see a lot of old friends and colleagues, and I welcome you all, and a lot of young people too, so that's a great expression of seeing so many young people. So I hope you enjoy the conference today, and yeah, we even feed you. I think that's a great thing. Very few places you can go these days and get fed. And so thank you very much for making all of this happen, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Okay, next up on our program, we have the deaf school principal, Dr. Angel Ramos. If we can all welcome him to the stage. Oh, thank you. So pretty, Angel is saying. Thank you. Thank you so much. Stay there, please, Pono. Aloha, aloha. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see so many people here today. Before we start, I really have to thank Disability and Communication Access Board. Without this, we would never have happened. Like he said, this is the first time in history. So, Pono, thank you so very much. Thank you. Ed Chevy for coordinating everything. Where is Ed? Where is Ed? Oh, right there. Come up, come up, come up. Yes. Thank you, Ed. Thank you. And now they asked me to talk about HSDB, Hawaii School for the Deaf and Blind. Before I start that, though, this is Deaf Awareness Day, correct? Yes? Well, wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. No. Deaf people, if you could raise your hands, please. All the people who are deaf in this audience. Okay. Do you need to be aware about yourself as a deaf person? Huh? Do you need to know about yourself? No. Okay. So for me, I was speaking with Matthew. Some of you might know him. He published the Deaf magazine. And so he's sitting right over there. Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. Maybe some of you have his Deaf Life magazine, but anyway, he told me, Deaf Awareness Day is not for deaf people, it's for hearing people. So hearing people know and learn about deaf people. Deaf people, we celebrate it. We celebrate. So today, we're going to do two things. Deaf Awareness Day is for the hearing people, and Deaf Celebration Day is for deaf people. What do you say? We can all be in collaboration for that. HSDB question. Before I was a teacher, I loved to ask my students questions. So I know you're not my students, but you're much older. But I do have a question. Who at HSDB, who ran HSDB? Who was the administrator, HSDB? Come on, can anybody? Not me, not me. No. I'm the principal, but what about who's got the power? Who really runs HSDB? Department of Education, DOE. The reason I say that is because, okay. The reason I say that is because many people think that the school, HSDB, is connected to them, meaning the Department of Education. But that is not true. HSDB belongs to you. It really, really belongs to all of you. You are responsible for making sure HSDB thrives. How many of you play pickleball? Is that the right sign, PB, for pickleball? How many of you play pickleball? 1, 2, 3? That's it? That's all? 4, 5? Oh, impossible. Pickleball players didn't show up, that means. Yeah, that means nobody showed up. But anyway, HSDB received $1 million. Yep. Legislator gave us $1 million to build a pickleball court. That means we're hoping to finish by next summer, meaning that you all, if you want to enjoy playing pickleball, we can have tournaments, you can come to HSDB and enjoy yourselves. We also have basketball. If you want to have a party, you can come to HSDB. If you want to have services, a memorial service, we can have that also at HSDB because it's like your home there. So please use it. If you remember, DOE, quote unquote, manages or controls HSDB, and sometimes the school needs something. And we can't use HSDB money. We're stuck. So what do we have to do? Soon we're going to be setting up HSDB SOAR, S-O-A-R Foundation. SOAR, well, in the past, it means Save Our Angel Ramos. But really, going back, HSDB, they transferred me out. Many of you supported me during that time, and I appreciate you and thank you for that. HSDB SOAR is not to save me anymore because I'm already saved. I don't need to be saved any longer. But HSDB SOAR, S-O-A-R, Thrive. It's a nonprofit foundation that will help raise money for HSDB. to use at HSDB for such things like activities. We're going to start. Steve Laraquente, if you could please stand up. He's starting the foundation. He's in that foundation. And I hope all of you work together with him to make it possible. HSDB is your home. You need to make sure that it continues. Okay? All right. Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you. And one last thing before I shut up. HSDB has been nationally certified, accredited, which means HSDB is not nothing. It means it's one of the top schools in the U.S. Some public schools here in Hawaii are not accredited. So I applaud my teachers. I'm not applauding me, but I did work hard, but I applaud my teachers. HSDB teachers, if you are here, could you stand up, please? Yes, you too. You're a house parent. You're still very, very important to this. Steve Laraquente, Steve. Yes, you too. Joshua, Kate, stand up. Yes. Many of you work at HSDB. Steve, stand up. Stand up. You forgot to stand up.
I'm old already.
All right, you made it accredited.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you so
I
much.
love you all.
So again, please, all of you are welcome to come and visit HSDB. Really, you've really helped to improve that school. And again, it's your home. If you want to visit it, come after 3 p.m., please. Okay? And thank you again for your support. I hope to see you there.
Thank you so much, Angel.
Yes,
Thank
good
you.
job, Pono.
Okay. So now the next, we have a keynote presenter, Ed Chevy. Please come up. Let's give a round of applause for Ed Chevy. Thank you.
Angel. What? You were up here, didn't say anything? What? Thank you so much. Thank you for this. Thank you.
Sorry,
you.
he asked me.
You know, when I went to Hawaii Rock Festival, I was kind of new. I was like, whoa. Then one guy came up. He had a microphone. And he said, aloha. And people all around were like, aloha. I thought that was crazy. I loved it. Again, aloha. And even more and more people were going, aloha. And now I'm here, so I want you to do it with me. Are you ready? Are you guys ready? Okay, ready? We're going to start with the A. Wait, I can't hear you. Come on. Aloha. All right, very good. You got it. When I first moved to Hawaii in 1986, I went to Kauai, not here. I moved to Kauai. And then when I arrived in Kauai, they had commission on people with handicaps. At that time, it was before it became decab. So that was new. And they were like, you're deaf? You're from the mainland? Oh, we have one deaf person from Ni'ihau. And And so I said, oh, really? Okay. Yes. Deaf person. We have a deaf person on Ni'ihau. And I had no idea the history or anything. I had no idea. I was like, okay, fine. And so that's the famous words. I always say, okay, fine. And so they called and I met, and then I drove over there to Waimea on Kauai, right? Waimea. It was around the corner, and took a boat, and they met us. And I sat and I waited, and sure enough, the boat came. Somebody was paddling, came over with the parents. And that deaf Hawaiian guy, ooh, he was big. He came up to me and was looking at me like this. And I was just, oh, wow. His skin was copper. Like Polynesian people, the dark skin under the sun, his skin, the color was a beautiful copper. I was like, whoa. And he said to me, that gesture, he just gestured because he had no language. He gestured like this. And I said, I'm deaf. He said, deaf? It was so different. We just had to sit there and gesture to each other to try to communicate. His parents just kind of observed from a distance. And the Commission on People with Handicaps, the woman's name was Joe Moody. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Okay. And so we were hoping that we could have myself go there once a week and so he could learn sign. But the parents said no. And we said, why? Because he belongs to Ni'ihau. That's where he's from. And I said, okay, I understand. But later I had wished, oh my gosh, I said, wait a minute. This man needs to be able to communicate through sign, not just gestures. But at that time, I didn't know. Now that I've been here for so long, I realize, we have a bigger deaf community here. I started to realize that story, Hawaii School for the Deaf and Blind, that story long time ago, 1914. Some people look at it from different perspectives, have different stories. And I've listened to the various stories, and I said, okay, fine. But again, like I said, I always say, okay. Bob Siegel from Rearview Mirror, he had a newspaper on Fridays that he would print, and I would look at those stories. It was, history behind Hawaii. And he always had right information, and he said that he got that information from archives. And so the archives means when he had an idea, he had it right there. And so when it was archived, it was saved. And so I said, he said that we have a deaf school here. And he had no clue when I shared that with him. He said, really? And so he did some research and he said, that's right. It's in the archives. And so I said, whoa. And he found the story. And that story was already right there. And it's in the middle. When you're finished here and you go on vacation, LOL, you can go read it. Not on vacation, but it's right back there. And now, if we go back and learn the history, it's kind of like a new bug. But 1920s, the sugar plantation, long ago, had different people from different places, Korea, Japan, Philippines, Portuguese, would come to work in the sugar plantations here in Oahu. And some of those families had deaf, hard of hearing, blind, people in wheelchairs in their families. And everybody would get together, and the language was born there. But this was a little bit different. Later, in the 1920s, it became bigger and bigger. It grew. And those young people, those young boys and girls would get together with hearing people, and they became legislators. A lot of them became legislators. So we said we have deaf and we have blind, we have handicaps. What do we do with them? What do we do with those people? But those young people became legislators. It didn't become a state yet, right? We were still a territory at that time. And so they called 2 women from the mainland to come. Of course, they came over on the boat. 2 women from America. They were very experienced with disabilities. And they said, you know, the deaf people can excel. And blind people are very creative and can make things, and deaf people can work and all of that. And so when they looked at them, they said, okay. And so they looked for some land, and they tried Palama, different schools, but they still wanted some land. And the man now who owned the deaf school, it was privately owned, that area. And then he said he wanted that area. And why he wanted that? Because it was close to the fire department. So if there was an emergency, they were there right away. And so they talked about it, and they decided to donate that land, and that's where they set up the deaf school in 1914. And so the story prior to that is the deaf school. I wanted you to know where it was from the sugar plantation, from the families, to thank all of those young workers, hearing people, the sons, the sisters, the daughters, what have you. And that's what they gave opportunity for the deaf school. And so now, after that, we still have the deaf school here. And so I thank Angel Ramos. I thank you. Are you sleeping, Angel? Are you sleeping over there?
I just wanted to make sure that you guys are paying attention.
Yeah, he teases me. I tease him right back. Yeah. So I hope that you can understand where the deaf school came from the sugar plantation days and Hawaii and all of that history. It's not easy for me because I was not born and raised in Hawaii. You know, I'm from California, San Francisco. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ed. Chevy. He's he will explain more later about the history and in more in deep detail at the back. So for now, we will start lunch. So you can go ahead and help yourselves. There's food on the side. Is lunch ready? Okay, a few more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and, you can go ahead and chat with each other or visit our little museum at the back. There's a lot of things to do. And when lunch is ready, I will let you know. I'll let each table know. And you can go ahead and line up for lunch. Okay, enjoy yourselves. And for the next hour and a half, and we'll start with the deaf panel at 1. Okay? Thank you.
Let me tell you what I've learned in all of this. What? Observing is amazing, right? Because I hear you when you don't catch. It's just seamless when you don't catch, like finger spelling and stuff. Bam, you caught.
Okay. I apologize for the technical issues. Now we're back on to our program. So before we begin, I just wanted to say thank you to the lunch that was provided to this company. Now we're going to have our deaf panel. We will have 5 panelists and their community members. First, I want to introduce each member. First of all is Colleen Sedade. Please come. The next person,
I'm like the queen.
we have Joy Enos. Joy Enos. The next person is Brian Nakamoto. The fourth person is Gisela Tomita.
I don't know. It's hard to see.
And the fifth person is Steve Laroquente. See if I spelled it right.
I'm sitting here waiting. Oh, I see. I'm waiting for the lay. Okay.
All right, before we start the questions, I want you to each introduce yourselves, where you're from.
Oh, I wanted to. This is not very deaf friendly the way we're seated. So, do you mind making it into like a C shape, the way our seats are formed?
Steve is saying, I see you now.
Okay,
Okay, should I stand up? Colleen is saying, should I stand up? Okay. Would you be nervous?
don't
I
mind.
guess I'll be nervous. But anyway, aloha. You want me to stand up? Would you prefer me standing? Okay, hello, here I am. Woo-hoo. My name is Colleen Sidade, and my sign name is this, Pono, not the C any longer, because people think I was looking and looking and looking and looking and looking. And I'm looking for Colleen. So I decided to change my sign name. This is my sign name because I love mascara. Anyway, even though we go camping, I still put on my mascara. I don't care. Anyway, I work as a house parent for about 9 months now. Prior to that, I was an EA for 32 years at the deaf school. Yeah, is that all you want me to say? Anything else? Nope, that's good. Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Joy Enos. I am from County Building, and I just moved on from. I just moved here back from Texas. I'm a community teacher at HSTV.
aloha. My name is Brian Nakamoto. This is my sign name. I was born and raised here in Hawaii, and my mom is deaf, as well as my dad is a coda. I didn't put it in the program book, but I have many deaf family members. So I was born into the deaf community. What did the person say? Oh, the lights. Cannot see? Somebody's mentioning lights. Yeah, somebody turn off the lights. Can we turn those lights back on? We need more lighting, please.
Put it in the interpreter's hand.
If we can put up the lights, please. Like, turn it up a little bit. On the stage, like towards the stage. Can you see him? Can you see Brian? Is this better?
That's not enough, Gisela. That's not enough light.
How about this? We need some
Everybody turn on the
strobe lights.
Everybody turn on their phones.
So I made the staff.
I know.
You're good. Come on. Come closer. Closer.
I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to wait again for the lights to be turned on. So thank you for your patience.
Kumbaya. Hoi. Oh, gonna make maca eyes.
Go home.
Lights.
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 Yeah, lights. Lights.
Lights on the stage, please.
Lights on the stage, please. Yay!
All right, here we are. Beautiful. I feel so good now. I can breathe with the mana. Yay. Thank you. All right, good. Everybody can see us? Good. Okay.
Okay, I will reintroduce myself. The light is nice. It looks like sun, in Hawaii. My name is Brian Nakamoto. This is my sign name. I was born and raised here on Oahu. Come from a deaf family. My mother's deaf. My dad is a coda. And my family had many deaf members, and including a deaf community. We have been born here. We have generation to generation. So I know I'm not the only one. There's other who are involved as well. HSDB, I work, and this fall it's been 15 years. So I've been there a long time. I feel like it's been only 5 years though. But there's a 1 in front of that 5, so it's actually 15 years. And I've worked at HSDB as a teacher, department chair. That's summarizes who I am. If you have more questions, you can ask me later.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Gisela. I want to ask you all, my students, what is my sign name? Thank you. Very good. This is my sign name. So right now I'm working at UH Manoa. Did my students, are Zoe students here? Can I see your hands? Thank you for being here.
Okay. Hello. My name is Steve. Last name is Lara Quente. I'm sure you'll forget my last name and the spelling, but that's okay. This is my sign name, so that's an easy way to remember me. I was born and raised in New York City, in the Bronx, and with a hearing family. I was the only one that was deaf in my family. I moved here to Hawaii because it's beautiful here. The people here are very nice with that aloha spirit. Compared to the Bronx, they have none. Anyway, I married a local girl, and that was really the primary reason of why I moved here. My wife is Margaret. And since then, I started teaching in New York City for 11 years, and then I moved here and I taught for 37 years altogether, 48 years I was a teacher. I don't know if I will ever stop. But anyway, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here. So let me clarify, you are from a hearing family, Colleen?
Yes, hearing family.
I'm Brian, deaf family.
Deaf.
Gisela, deaf family. So 2 are from deaf family, the other 3 are from hearing families. So we're going to begin with the first question. We'll start with Colleen.
All right, me again. Here we go.
Yeah, you're special.
Okay.
What is your favorite kind of communication and why? As far as communication, what do you prefer?
Well, do you want me to stand? You want me to stay? Okay. Well, see, for the most important thing for me with communication is closed captions. You know, I can chat with my family, we can discuss things. I used to have no captions a long time ago, and I was very frustrated. And then Hurricane Iniki hit, and there was no information. My family was like taping the windows, and I'm like, what is going on? You know, because when I grew up, I spoke, and everybody's like, just wait. And I had no idea what was going on. And everybody was preparing for that hurricane. When I look back, you know, the captions would have been for my safety. So I knew what was going on, how to communicate with my friends and communicate with my family and know what was going on. So that was really a tough time.
Thank you. How about Troy? For me, my preferred language, I started with SEE. My parents were very involved in the deaf community. Signing exact English, that's what SEE means. So my parents were very involved in the deaf community. I have family nights out, you know, and they would be signing, and there's mentors that come to Kona because there's not a lot of deaf people in Kona. So yeah, my parents never made me read their lips. They learned how to sign, and then we have home signs, and pidgin, broken English, and then like lala and cow, and all the different grammars. And my mom was very good in SEE. So I have 3 mentors that I wanted to mention and thank. I learned SEE later, but of course there's oral as well, and there's total communication. It's cool. So the first one is Ed at Chevy, and not only he taught sign language to me, but I look up to him as my role model, and you know the way he's deaf role model. And also Jeff and Linda, they're a very fun couple. And also the other deaf students, I work with the mainstream schools. And the third one is my first deaf teacher. I have 1, 2, 3, I would say 3 hearing teachers before I had my first deaf teacher. And that's Steve. So I really look up to Steve, and you know, my parents were very afraid that, can a deaf teacher control or teach the students? So they freaked out, and, because they've never had a deaf teacher in Kona. It's a small island, and can he drive? Does he have a license? How is he going to be a teacher? So my parents learned a lot from that. And signing, they picked it up a little bit more. And then I went to HSDB and I started learning more sign language and also oral total communication. So not to be thinking like a hearing person. And I didn't want to confuse my identity if I was hard of hearing or deaf. And my mom was saying, no, you are deaf. But I felt a bit different. I felt that I was in both worlds. And I do identify as deaf, but I do compare, like with my best friend Kia, who is hard of hearing, but she can use the phone, but I can't. And we use the TDD. And that's, the way we communicated. And then we picked that up. And then in HSDB, we were signing. And then when I moved to MSD for my senior, I was really overwhelmed because the signing was faster, because EDC has different culture and it's not very deaf friendly as DC. So the teachers were signing really fast, and I was really embarrassed to like raise my hand or participate in class. So I would wait until the class is done, and then I talk to the teacher, like, what did you say? Can you review it to me? Because it's a little bit fast. And then I got better with my ASL. And then when I visit my family in Hawaii, I forgot, that I was signing too fast. I do have deaf cousins in Kona, and they're like, hey, I don't understand, you're signing too fast. So I have to switch back to my roots, my island signs, and I go in and out. So I know how to switch back to like my mainland and my island sign language.
All right, as you can see, there's many different ways to communicate. You have C, total communication, ASL. There's various methods and ways. Back east, they sign much faster. So there's differences. There's not just one standardized, ASL that's the same. There's many different ways and styles. Thank you so much. Now, Brian. My preferred method of communication is sign language. I was born to a signing, but my mother was deaf. And at that time, my mom would not sign ASL. She signed C, signing exact English, what C means. She would sign the articles, the, fishing, ing, played, all the tenses, the suffix and prefixes. Then I went to school and I started meeting. I met Colleen. There's Auntie Colleen here. And she said, you signed C, you need to learn ASL. Let's try that. So I was a little afraid, but I went ahead and started learning ASL, and I just became very fluent. And I thank Auntie Colleen for that. I continue to do ASL. I do some C sometimes, and I went to HSDB. And again, Colleen was at HSDB. I met Steve. I met my classmates, these two people on the side, Antizella and Joy. And ASL is just a beautiful language. But I do code switch, just like the other lady said. When I moved to California, and then I moved to DC. So there's various, in Hawaii, we're a little more laid back, a little slower. It doesn't mean bad, just we're just island style, kind of slower. In California, it's pretty, I would say medium speed. East Coast, it's high speed. Gallaudet, I remember going and saying, time out, people. I caught maybe the first and last letter, and that's it. In between, it went by fast. But then I came back to Hawaii. I got used to the East Coast, and I came back to Hawaii. It's like, oh, we're slow-mo now, slowing down. So I got used to being able to code switch or go between the different regional sign styles.
Thank you, Gisela. Yes, for me, it's ASL all the way from when I was born, because my parents are deaf. Quote unquote, I was privileged, and I had a silver spoon. I was ready. I had access. Nothing that I couldn't understand language wise. But later on, I met some friends, some deaf friends, and their parents weren't signing at all. At work as well, I see the other parents weren't signing, and there's like communication barrier. They thought their deaf child couldn't do anything, and but you always need an interpreter. And I really suck at oral, so I tried to do it, to lip read, but I really did not work for me. So I'm ASL all the way. So having an interpreter for me is really important so I can communicate with hearing people. Without an interpreter, it's going to be so time consuming. We'll be writing. I don't prefer that because I still have, deaf English and the grammar is different. So for me, it's ASL. That's my mode of communication. Full access for me. There's no barriers. And again, many years later, I felt like not all deaf people are the same as in my situation. So I know some would be saying elite because I have a deaf family, and my parents are from Gallaudet, and I went to Gallaudet and the Deaf Institute, and they would say elite, but the deaf school. But then I understand all the different connections, and I'm impressed with ASL. Really, that's really our way to communicate with each other. If not for ASL, then I'd be writing and doing gestures and doing broken signs. Imagine in UH if there's no ASL class, because ASL is really important. So it's an amazing language.
For me, I agree with all of these folks. ASL is amazing. It's wonderful. I love that language. The first question is, what's your favorite type of communication? And for me as well, it's ASL. Even though growing up, I was in a hearing school. I learned to speak orally, right? I used a hearing aid. Hold on. I would have to adjust it. And I would also have to learn other things like facial expressions or grammar, body language, kinds of things to understand and have people understand me. But my favorite is definitely ASL, just like you folks all mentioned. And you always have to code switch to either speed up or slow down and to match who you're speaking with, who the other deaf person is, whatever level they are, whatever they use as far as language. And it includes gestures as well. Sometimes I might have to draw a picture. Okay, this is a house. And so for 48 years, my teaching experience with the students who have arrived at our school have absolutely no language and are just shocked. And people are signing and it's going over their head. They have no idea what they're talking about. So I've had to work with them, and I absolutely love that challenge. When I see light go on in their eyes because they finally understand and they feel proud of themselves and they feel great. Brian, I remember him when he showed up in my high school math class, but he was in middle school at the time. JK, Jane Kelleher Fernandez, was the administrator at that time. And she brought him in. She's like, would you mind teaching him math? Because his level is so high, he doesn't match with the middle school. And I was like, with my high school kids, he was a tiny little thing, and all of the other high school kids were tall. But I said, okay, what am I going to teach him? They said, algebra. Are you ready for algebra? Okay. So I worked with him, and the other students, I said, you go work on your own. I'm going to work with Brian for a little bit and teach him. And Joy, 37 years ago, oh my God, I feel old now, but anyway, second grader from a hearing school. She was Kona Waena Elementary School. And they were ready to put her with the hearing class. I said, wait a minute. She needs an interpreter. So I had my EA at the time, became the interpreter, but my EA, her signing, not so great. Do you remember if I ask you, is that okay? Having this EA become your interpreter?
It was scary at first, yeah. I was scared of her.
But she said, okay, can do it, can
We were doing
understand,
hand
right?
signs. She wasn't certified, but I understood her, yeah. She was signing and voicing, total communication.
Yeah, so it worked out. She's a smart girl, yeah. So then, yeah, for me, again, communication is definitely ASL. But I grew up oral. I didn't learn ASL until I was 21 years old. It was very awkward at the beginning, but then I just met so many different people, deaf people in the community, and that forced me to be involved and to have to communicate through ASL. And then I became fluent. It took several years later, but I'm a slow learner, maybe 5 years. But anyway, yeah, that is my preferred. Colleen said, I would like to add, when I grew up in a hearing school, there was no interpreter. It was all oral. And so I thought I was fine. I was speaking and just going along. You know, I was popular at the time. I was a cheerleader. I was in activities. And then at 16, somebody told me, you're deaf. I said, I'm not deaf. No, no, no. You got a hearing aid. What for? And I was like, wait, what? Huh? What? What? DEAF? Oh my goodness. No, 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 no. And so I just kept going along until I went to college. And understand, I grew up misunderstanding a lot of things. For example, okay, don't say what I'm going to say. What is that? You might think, I love you. For me, it was island view. Oh, misunderstand. Or, okay, turn off. What is that? Hawaii talk. See you later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I thought bye-bye. So growing up, I had all these misunderstandings until I went to college, and then I started learning ASL. Oh, finish. At 21, I was like, boom, done. I'm done. I felt dirty. I had to wipe myself off. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And then I started ASL at age 21. So again, yes, very important.
As you can see, each one of them had different means of communication throughout their lifetime, their journey, the experiences they had. Some signed at an early age, others didn't learn sign language till later in life. So based on their experiences, they shared that. Now, I would like to start with Steve with this question. This is the second question. The deaf community, what does the deaf community mean to you?
The deaf community, I feel same. Same, we learn the same. We're not different. You know, even though I grew up different speaking, I grew up speaking. I remember with my mom, she would speak like this, and I would be like, I don't know what was going on. Why was my mom pulling me away from, from deaf people? And I was like, what? My mom, she said, you're going to be, she was advised by professionals at the time to not be around deaf people who sign. You know, if they sign, forget it. Your son is going to live a ruined life. And so that's what my mom thought. And so she didn't know who to believe. The professionals, quote unquote, who were warning her about sign language, or, believe me, I'm her son, and I'm telling her and showing her that I could be successful no matter what. But my mom decided to believe me eventually. And so growing up at that time, I grew up speaking, again, with no exposure to anyone who is deaf. The culture, the language, nothing, absolutely nothing. Who am I? I was 18 and I was wondering, who am I? DEAF? Because I did a hearing test, right? And I could hear some. And so they told me, now you are legally deaf, DEAF. And so I said, wow, okay, what does that mean? For me, I have no idea. So I decided to go ahead and learn sign language, and I, became friends with deaf people, got involved with the deaf community, and I found my identity with the deaf community. I'm like them. We're all the same. We're equal. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Gisela.
The deaf community, I can't really pick one word, but you remember I was born with deaf parents. And of course, when I was a baby, my mom and my parents would go to events with deaf people, or they would come over and chat and chat and chat and chat and chat all day, all night. So I would tell my mom, okay, let's go home, let's go home. And this is a funny story. My aunt told me, it was a number of years ago. I will never forget. It was awful. So there was a party and they were just talking, and I was looking for my parents. Just come to find out, they told my parents, oh, Giselle's been crying, and then my parents were like, she'll cry herself to sleep. And they just continued chatting, and just they wanted to spend time with their deaf friends, and just let Gisela cry. And I was like, oh, that's awful. And then I myself have codas. I have 2 kids, and my sons, they're both hearing, and we would go to deaf events, or go with deaf friends, and they would ask me, come on, let's go home, mom. And yeah, you suffer the same fate. And I wanted to add, like, the deaf community is really a champ, because not just locally, but worldwide, like the events, like Pono is involved in World Cup for the golf tournaments. He's been to Deaf Olympics, and there's Deaf World Olympics, and it gives us connection to other people, other deaf people in other countries, and it's amazing that we can chat and talk to each other. There's the universal sign language. There's we all know ASL. It's like English. It's very strong. That's what we use. And then there's other countries that don't really know ASL as much, so they use universal signs. So excuse my language. So yeah, but the world events are really great to be connected and have that strong connection, because you don't want to be left behind. You don't want to have the deaf person left out, and we just want to welcome them with open hearts and minds and be connected. And that's how we want total communication, and just to share, and we have discussions, and we have ways to enter the real. It's not easy to be included in the hearing world, so we have resources and resilience, and we are proud that we recognize that, and continue and face challenges as much as we can and overcome those. The community is a lot, and I can't imagine the community not being part of it. It can't be just you. It can't.
Especially for the deaf community, if it's small, it's hard to find. So that is why, we appreciate more having a deaf community here. So let's go on to Brian. As a child in the deaf community, what that means to me, it means free. My eyes are free. I can see all the conversations, even as a young child. I can eavesdrop. And some of them, the different signs. And I'd get home and say, hey, Mom, I saw this sign and this sign. And my mom said, oh, well, this is what this means. Sometimes she'd say, oh, I'll tell you about that one later, that vocabulary. So, and I wouldn't learn that until I was an adult, and I'd go, oh, okay. But sometimes they were not words that a child should know. But another example is like Gisela. My mother's deaf. My parents got divorced, and they would talk. My auntie Eileen, they would talk for hours. I would say, Mom, I gotta go. Let's go home. Mom, I'm saying, no. You go play your game. You're too much. It's my turn. It's my time to be with my friends and talk. And so I would have to be patient. And one night, remember, it was New Year's Eve, and my mom and my auntie, they were some gathering, and they were all together, and there was a celebration. At 4 a.m., I was saying, Mom, please, let's go home. Mom said, no, wait. 4 a.m., we got home, and I didn't get to sleep till 5. And that's happened like 6, 7, when I was, and 6 and 7 years old. So they're good and bad experiences. But as I go older, you too, we share sign language. We have a shared history and language. Hearing people, some can sign, deaf people sign. Some people are fluent. Some people are not so much fluent. But sign language is the key. That is what gives us access and communication, and that defines the community. So, of course, there's people from various backgrounds and experiences that are part of the members of the community, but we tell stories together. There's the community is all these different factors, and
Without community.
without community, we would not have that. If you just be, oh my goodness, you can't just be home, of course I'm on my phone sometimes, but I need a break from that. It's nice to go out in community rather than just being at home on your phone. Like here, this is a community event. Did you notice that the two of them, they had mentioned being, overnight gatherings of deaf people? It's very true what Zella and Brian said. I know some of you have had that same experience. That is deaf culture. That's a common experience.
Yes. How about how do we leave? Like,
That is a good question,
how
Gisela.
do you leave? Do you turn off the lights? Do we have to turn it off so we can't see? Okay, the deaf community I grew up in Kona. It's a small community, so not a lot of deaf people. So, but I have a few deaf cousins that are my age. I have a deaf auntie who's older, and she signs differently. I feel like she's making up her signs. Maybe it's home signs. And I would go to like hearing parties or birthdays or graduations, gatherings, and my cousins who were deaf, I would sign with them, talk with them. We would be left out, that's how we would feel with the communication. But some hearing cousins can, hey, you can talk. And so they would make me lip read, and then my deaf cousin would be interpreting, and then interpret for my deaf cousin. And how come your cousin can't lip read? Because my cousins we didn't grow up the same way. So it depends on the parents on how, how we're communicating, how involved we are with FLV. There's a lot of events and different gatherings, and my parents would be included or involved in the deaf community. But when I'm around my deaf cousins, I could see the big difference. With my deaf cousins, their parents don't sign; they're very lazy, or just do gestures, pull their ears, or like come here, like tap, like can you tell? And they'd have me interpret for my cousins when they're fighting. So I became an interpreter because I lip read, and then when my dad when he got caught, I was about 7 to 11 years old. We were still using interpreters for my cousin. I was interpreting for my cousins, but I felt like we're signing the same language and we understood each other. I felt frustrated with the communication barrier, and my deaf voice isn't perfect. Like when I say hello, hearing people would think I said allo. So there's those little words that I say, pronounced the wrong way. So I prefer sign language for communication. I love the deaf community, and the deaf community is like my second family, Ohana. The hearing brothers and sisters that I have, I do express myself to them, but I do express more to my, not blood brothers and sisters, but again, my Coda children would understand my sign language. That's their first language when they were babies. So they weren't talking, they were signing all the way. And I remember my mom had took me to late speech therapy and then Gallaudet and all, and then taking care of my children like, for Christmas breaks. And they were 3 years old, and they would be signing, and they were telling me, Joy, it's so good. Why don't you use total communication? They're not deaf. They would get mad at me because my children are not deaf. But I just wanted to make sure that my children understood my language, my sign language. I worked hard for that. And, when my parents would have me do oral, and they would be saying, oh, they need to learn how to speak, not sign. But for me, I wanted to make sure that my children understood the language, my language. And they're twins and they're different. So they have more patience, so they talk first and then sign next. But it's important that they do receive the communication well.
Wow, that was tough, Joy. You had some tough times, but it's good to see you now here and where you are and being very successful in your present time. So, Colleen.
For me, again, I grew up hearing community, Filipino club, Hawaiian club. We would attend and participate. I understood, that community, supportive, helpful, serve, be involved, volunteer, that type of thing. What hit me was when I was 21, I understood ASL and the deaf culture, and I really took that in. And instead of being the other community, I felt really connected to be an advocate in the deaf community. and be with deaf interpreters. And I realized that there is a need in the community. You know, if somebody uses drugs, and then they get together, sometimes they don't. Being together was like a drug. And so being away, and then when COVID hit, it was really difficult. And then when COVID was done, I was like, where's the deaf community? Where is everybody? And I looked around, and my heart was broken. And so I said, where is everyone? And I was looking for everyone to get together. And so I believe that the deaf communities is very important and valuable to us. Hearing people too, you know, they're learning to become interpreters, or they want to communicate with their cousins or their friends, what have you. But learning about Hawaii culture, again, was my first language. You know, I followed and I did hula, okay. But in the back, I really didn't understand what that meant. I just followed the actions and the movements. But later, the Big Island, Mauna Kea, oh my gosh, I'm going to cry. I was going to cry. Remember, we saw that and they explained to us what it meant, and I was crying because the language was right there. You know, Hawaiian, changing it to ASL, I was like, where's my community? And yes, my Hawaiian community, I learned the language, so I've actually got ASL, sign language, Hawaiian language, and it's all in me. And I want to teach my children that. Even though deaf, hard of hearing, what have you, I think, you know, it's good to teach sign. So it's important to have the deaf community anywhere. USA, like you said, universal, right?
Gisela, did you have something to say?
I wanted to name one important word, DTS. Dinner table, what's the S? Syndrome, DTS. Imagine yourselves at a dinner table. Imagine yourselves being the only deaf person with a hearing family that don't sign. No interpreters, because you have to pay them. So you're with your family, they're talking, and you're the only deaf person. Just imagine that.
Just focus on eating.
So we don't have DTS in a deaf family because we're signing. You know, you can always chat and you can understand each other. Maybe not proper communication, but we can understand. But with the hearing table, the deaf person becomes it feels really low and frustrating and low self-esteem. And I don't know what they're talking about. Imagine. I just wanted to highlight that, you know, in the deaf community, we don't have that type of barrier. We don't have that.
Right.
Yeah, the feeling of feeling left out. I did cry at Thanksgiving when all my uncles and aunties were talking, and I was there. My cousins were playing, and I was just sitting there, and I started to cry. And I do, you know, it felt really bad feeling left out. And I also wanted to add another point. Last summer, I visited my mom's side of the family. So my aunties were there and just writing, and like, you know, what she was saying was, I remember when you were about 7 years old, I went to go see your family, and I told them that they were stupid. Because she was told she was stupid because she didn't sign, and she felt like she wanted to go home. And my dad's side was all deaf, and they would sign, and my cousins would be there. It's easy to communicate, but on my mom's side, it's different. Why are you bringing? And I asked her, why are you bringing this up 30 years later? Because she still doesn't sign. See, you're stupid. My aunt still doesn't sign, so.
Related to DTS, dinner table syndrome. I'm sure that many of us here in the audience, maybe everybody has experienced that. Is that correct? I see a lot of heads nodding yes. So
Sometimes you get it, but they're talking so fast and you're trying to catch it, and you feel very, very lost and frustrated. And sometimes, you know, I can talk and they forget that I can't hear, and they're like, oh, yeah. I'll talk to you later. You know, it's not important. And I'm like, wait a minute. And a couple hours later, I'm like, do you remember this? And they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. That kind of a thing.
Oh, and also the opposite. I would be signing with my deaf cousin, and then my hearing relative would be like, "I don't know what you're saying," and yeah, and you would cut them off. Yes.
With my hearing family, I was lucky because I had two brothers, two sisters, siblings, and my parents and my grandparents too lived with us. So, oh my gosh, everybody was talking. But all people were respectful, so that if I was quiet for maybe 2 minutes, because they know I like to talk too, right? So if I was quiet for a few minutes, they would say, wait a minute, Steve is not talking. And so everybody would look at me and they would say, what? And I'd say, what are you talking about? And then they would explain it to me, like, oh, Gisela mentioned this, what this was funny. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I could catch up with the conversation and then I would start to talk again. So my family was really good. They knew how to include me. They would wait. Oh, Steve's not involved. Hold on a second. And then they would explain it to me and then I would be able to catch up. So then we would move on until the next time I was stuck and I would miss something and not sure what they were talking about. And they would look at me and they would be like, okay, do you need us to explain? And so that I was very lucky in that way, I think.
Yes, I would have to add to that the dinner table experience. Like when I was growing up, I would always sit next to my mom. She would interpret for me. And then she would chat with someone and I'd be eating and then interpret later. And sometimes she would forget and I'd be like, I just let it go. It's always, I
Yeah, 'cause
appreciate
it's
my
not
mom
important.
sitting with me to be my personal interpreter. Even joining the hula class, my sisters, there's no paid interpreters. So my mom would be my personal interpreter to explain what hula meant and everything. So I really appreciate my mom for interpreting for me. I didn't feel left out.
As you know, I'm from a deaf family and my father could sign. However, when I went to my grandparents' home in Haliva, they were hearing, and my grandmother both could hear. They would talk, and I would just sit there, left out. And so I just play games, not for hours and hours, but I would play games, and then, they would fingerspell very slowly. Be with you later. They would spell it very slowly. When I got older, though, like in middle school, what I would do when I went to my grandparents' house, I would tell I would go out with friends instead of sitting in their house. And you go ahead and be with your family, I'd tell mom, but I wouldn't want to go out because there was no conversation, no communication. They fingerspell very slowly for me. And, it wasn't, the Rochester method where you fingerspell every single word. That it was totally like not going to happen with me. So what my mom would do, she would, every Friday, we agreed that what we would do is after school, I'd take the bus to my grandparents' house and I would stay there for 3 hours, about 3 hours. And then when mom's done work, she'd come pick me up. And then I would go back to town. And then I could be with my mom and we had direct communication. And I said I wasn't crazy about going there because, again, there was no communication. They just fingerspelled every single word and it would be totally boring. And I realized later on that I really had to self-advocate. And rather than just sit there and do nothing and play games, do my homework and have no communication, instead, my mom said, you need to do this. So I would go home, and then when family gatherings would happen at dinner time, I would be patient during family dinners. But there was one time when everyone was talking, and I was, my mom could lip read pretty well. She's a pretty proficient lip reader. But it became really tasking for my mom, for me, kept saying, what are they saying? What are they saying? So I felt left out. I stopped going to family events, and that was the end of that. And then my mom said, well, we're going to have a family gathering. And I said, but I depend on you interpreting all the time. You're deaf. I don't want you to have to do that. So my mom then realized that we came to a compromise in family gatherings. So I would go, sometimes I would go, sometimes I would be excused. But it was too hard, my mom. I wanted to support the family at the same time. We were deaf, and my mom grew up, lip reading and in the mainstream program. She never went to the deaf school. And so she wasn't exposed to deaf culture. It wasn't until I was born that was kind of overwhelming for her because we were, raised in a different way. So we kind of grew up together in the deaf community. Okay. So the next question And I'm going to start with the middle person, Brian. Yeah. Do you have a personal experience where you had were very, very frustrated? Yeah. And, okay. Okay. So, at McDonald's, Burger King, any of you guys, in playgrounds, you know how they have the different playgrounds for kids and that was fast food places? Well, when I was a kid, it was, you could communicate. You couldn't communicate with them, but you would gesture. And so what would happen is because of that, sometimes every time I go to McDonald's or Burger King, I would be left out. I would be shunned. And so I stopped going to those places. And I told my mom I did not want to go there, and she wasn't sure why. When she asked me, she said, well, because there's no friends there. They, no one to play with. And I remember then there was two kids, and they were talking, and they were getting bawled out. And my mom, I was very embarrassed. I was very embarrassed. My parents said, what happened? I explained, they were saying, this kid is deaf, and they want to play with you. So the other kids were getting scolded. Anyway, it was a traumatic event. I decided I'm not really into going to the playgrounds at the fast food places. And it wasn't until high school when I went to mainstream program. Then I was, because I had gone to the deaf school all my life, and it wasn't until high school that I got in a mainstream program. And all these hearing people, and I was just very small percentage were deaf people. And then I realized, oh, that's what it means to have isolation. In the deaf school, there was no isolation. I was a part of the major group. In the mainstream program, I was in the isolated group. The hearing people were in the majority. So the teachers, in the classroom, we were mainstreamed. And the interpreters would come in. I remember I had a bad experience when interpreters didn't sign very fluently at all, not like the interpreters today, but they barely could sign. I didn't think that was good at all. And they told him, you can't get an interpreter, another interpreter, we have to stick with this one. I said, no, this is not going to do. So I told my parents, and my dad was an ASL interpreter, and I said, we can get another interpreter. So they contacted the agency, and sure enough, the district office with my mom, they said they wanted a certified interpreter for my son. And, we want somebody new could do educational interpreting. So they hired somebody they were going to, but instead, they called Life Science, which was under GLAD, the Greater Los Angeles Association of the Deaf in LA. And so my father, he was an interpreter. I didn't realize this, but anyway, he worked it out. So there was an interpreter there was signing for me, and then I was able to understand things much more clear because of the way they switch interpreters. And I was able to pass my courses, and it was very frustrating, but because of the interpreting was the key to lessen the frustration. They worked everything out internally, and I was able to make it. So those two experiences are my the playground and the lousy interpreter are my bad situations. Okay, let's go over to the next person.
I forgot the question.
What is a personal experience that you've had, which was very frustrating in the hearing world?
Well, obviously, sound. I do enjoy music. It's not fair, the hearing people, they wake up to sound, maybe some sounds you don't like the chickens or the birds, the rooster. But the music, like podcasts, you can hear that. I can't do that. So that part of it is like when I'm driving to work, imagine I'm in traffic for an hour. And you can see hearing people like singing and dancing in traffic, and I can't do anything. That's my, like, it felt like it's unfair. And that's how I feel a little bit frustrated because it's not fair, And finally, with my phone, I can get more information. And a lot of time it's way later. And then, like, say, with hearing classes, for example, yoga. The teacher would say something, like the instructions, and they would all lay down and do, like, dim the lights. And I go, I cannot see. What am I going to do? I'm going to lay down. And then she's explaining what we're doing and breathing. And because I can't really catch up when I close my eyes. I won't know what they're saying. I won't be able to follow the instructions with my eyes closed. I'd, fall asleep and just, I'd wake up and so I'd keep my eyes closed. So, and I didn't feel the full meditations that, I feel frustrated with that. They should put captions or have an interpreter. So that's, it needs to be fair. Same thing with music. You see the singer and there's a really good interpreter, but I want to see the lyrics. Yeah, you're interpreting, you're a champ, but I want to read the lyrics. I want it there so I can see it. So they should add captions behind the singer, the performer. So that's what makes me frustrated. It's not fair. That's not full access yet. So
The most frustrating thing for me that hearing people do is when they say, in quotes, never mind, it's not important. Excuse me, what did you say? I missed. What did you say? I'm sorry. I can't hear. Oh, never mind. It's not important. Grr. That really irks me. So what's important is for hearing people in the room to respond, wow, that's cool, or they're laughing, or what have you. And I'm like, oh, wait, what happened? What did they say? What is everybody laughing at? What is the joke? What was said? What? Oh, never mind. It's not important. Ooh, man, that irks me. Makes me angry. Okay, my turn. Oh, gosh, there's many things, experiences with hearing people. Let's see. I'm fine talking, but hearing. Ooh, yeah, the hearing part. I must have a hearing aid at all times. 24/7, even though I was born hard of hearing, what have you. But the technology now with the lights and taking care of my baby. Like in the bakery, my mom wanted to order a pie, right? For dessert, to get us several pies. And so I went in. Oh gosh, the worst experience I had, I didn't know what was inside the pie. I didn't know if it was strawberry, if it was banana. I didn't know what was inside, right? Because there was no label. And so, oh, this is the pie here, like cherry pie or all the different kinds, but there was nothing. There were no labels, absolutely nothing. I'm like, okay. Even the cakes, no labels. So I got on, and my hearing aid died, so I could hear it go beep, 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 dead. And then, I really had a hard time talking. And so I just felt, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Okay. So I said, I'm deaf. And I said, what kind of pie is this? What is that? And then they just gave me kind of attitude. Like they didn't know how to deal with me. And they were just like, had no patience. I said, could you write? And they were just like, no. And she ripped the paper and she wrote it. And I was like, wow. This one right here. So I took the pie that I wanted. She wrapped it up. And you know what was worse? There was no price. The cashier, there was no price. So I wrote to her and I was like, excuse me, how much is it? And she just kind of, again, had attitude and was like, my life, when I look back at all deaf people, I realize deaf, however you want to say it, people are like, oh, I can do this, I'm fine. But I realize for me, I'm in the same boat. People get so impatient and be like, oh, okay, here, I'll just write it. And so I decided to buy, I wasn't going to buy the paper and pen. So what I did was the pie in the box, I just pushed it over and I said, you know what, never mind. And I left. And the Hawaiian man said, yeah, because they should communicate with you. And they didn't even try. So I got home and my mom said, where's the pie? And I started crying. I said, you know what? They had absolutely no patience with deaf people. They didn't even try to communicate with me. And so my mom got on the phone and she called Mary's Bakery. And my mom was on the phone. She says, I'm going to call him. I'm going to call him. I'm doing it. I am so done with that. And I was like, what is going on? Okay. So several years later, my favorite bakery was Leonard's, right? Leonard's Bakery. Oh, hot malasada. Anyway, my whole life, I was traumatized from that experience. So when I go in there, I would drive by it and I wanted it so bad because it's so delicious, the malasadas. But anyway, I finally got the courage to go in. So I breathed and the door opened and I went in. And guess what? They had labels on everything. People were looking at me. I was like, oh my gosh, they have labels. Oh my gosh, on the cake, they have all the names of it. And everybody was looking at me, and I was like, I would like this one. And I put it up on the counter, and I said, oh, the money, the cashier. And oh my gosh, I was like, yes, I could see the cashier. And I screamed, I was like, yes. I said, can I talk to the manager? I had my hearing aid at the time. And I said, thank you. Look at this. You are the one. The other ones, they're fired. You're going to fire them? Yep. And so I said, wait a second. And so he gave me a whole slew of hot malasadas. I was like, whoa, thank you so much. And I left. But what that means is it's so important to overcome, no, maybe that's not the word, but to advocate and to teach them, educate them, deaf accessibility. But yeah, so that was my worst experience ever.
For me, there's a lot. I had to pick one. The most important for me, very, very, like even now, it's the Hawaiian language. I started dancing hula. So first, I'd go back with my sister, joining the hula classes. She's 7 years older than me, and my mom would watch me. I was 3. I was just playing. I wasn't getting serious yet. Just watching, observing, following. But I didn't really understand until I was like, I really started dancing at 6 in little groups. Kuki and Hulani. She's my teacher. And I really enjoyed hula. I would be in the background. I'd be in the back, and I felt all the drums.
Same.
And with my hearing aid, I wasn't completely deaf, so I could still hear like the back. And my teacher would be at the back, and then her clapping the tempo, and they would be speaking in Hawaiian language in front of me. And, like, I would be lip reading, just seeing how the lips are moving. There's no voice.
What about expression?
Yes, expressions, movements, hand movements. And then the lips, I always feel like I really want to know the Hawaiian language. Like one word after like little words. And my mom would always be my personal interpreter, like in camp and hula, and my sisters about culture and the hula history. I know all about that, but I'm really craving for the Hawaiian language. Because my dad, he does speak Hawaiian. That's his first language, and the second language is English, and he speaks broken English, and my brothers and sisters can hear, but it depends on, because my dad doesn't really speak Hawaiian to me, only gestures and home signs. It's more visual. But with my sisters, they went to Kamehameha school, and I felt, I love them, and I understand hula and understand what it means. This is flower and land and home, the mountain, and the concept. But I wish I could really fully understand the Hawaiian language.
The translation.
The translations and writing. It would be nice to dance and understand the Hawaiian language as well. That's what I'm craving for. And the second one, as I grew up with hearing, it's just one hearing aid, just here in the side, growing up. And then at age 31, I decided it's 113 dB, so I'll be deaf. So there's no use for the hearing aids. So there's 4 people. They asked about if I wanted a CI. But this wasn't, my other ear wouldn't be working. Maybe later on, maybe there's going to be a new technology, maybe a chip that, maybe we'll save that. But for the CI, the cochlear implant. And there's other hearing people in my family, CI would fix everything. The implant, you would understand us when what we're talking about. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You still have to talk slow. You still have to do gestures and sign. That doesn't fix everything. I needed to educate my hearing family about that. But I love, I don't feel sorry about, hearing music. That's what I like to hear. And also with my kids, when they say mom or knock the door and the background music and the background sounds, but like each word, no, I can't follow that. The cochlear implant doesn't really fix everything. So my parents told me that I can decide it for myself. It's my own body. It's not, their decision. And they did support, my hearing parents, like hearing parents don't support it to decide for the children. So I would be using hearing aids till I grew, and then it's up to them to decide. Don't do surgery and make decisions for them. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Joy mentioned cochlear implant, and which does not fix everything. I think that's one of the misnomers most people think. The people misunderstand. They think it is going to fix everything, which it doesn't. Now I'm going to go into the final question. We'll start with Gisela. So what is your most memorable memory as a child of your deaf identity?
That's interesting. That's an interesting question because, like I said, I was born in a deaf family. But in terms of identity, my mom, my sister, we moved to the mainland. Okay, let's go back. So I do have a deaf family. My cousins as well, like this guy sitting in front of me, Sean, my other cousin, they're both deaf. So that's really nice. We're very close. We can talk to each other. My mom's side is a different story. So we would be chatting with the deaf family, yes, but with identifying as deaf, I didn't know until, because honestly, if you met my mom, I don't mean to tease, but she's a little crazy. She's a crazy deaf mom. She would just go and she loves to travel. And she loves to meet different people, deaf friends from the past and travel alone. And she would really go for it. And so she'd be very assertive. And she traveled to New York and she went to Lexington. Yes.
Ooh, Queens, New York, she should go.
So she went to the Deaf Institute there. And at first I was in mainstream and identified as deaf. I'm like, yeah. So what? I'm deaf. I'm from a deaf family. And then when I went to Lexington, I was like, oh, you're deaf too. Or we're the same. So there's a deaf teacher. And I understood the deaf teacher and explaining everything to me. And it was really cool the way they talk story. And in that class, I was really immersed in that class. And, there would be interpreters that aren't so great. And the deaf program is, there's different ages. There's, people that are age 2 and then 16-year-old all in one class. And it's not age appropriate, but that's what they had, and because that teacher could sign, so we were put in one class. So I felt that wasn't right, but oh well. And my mom was like, no more, you're gonna move to the mainland. So imagine from Hawaii, from the island going to the mainland. I was like overwhelmed, but it was really great because I learned my identity. Like, it was stronger for me, more powerful. It gave me empowerment. And also coming from a deaf family and having deaf friends and different events and sports and being exposed to, so it did show me like that, that was my identity. And when I went back to Hawaii, I didn't want to go to the mainstream school. And my parents was like, oh, because imagine we're from Maui, it's HSDB is in Oahu, so I wanted to go to the Deaf Institute, so I'd have to fly back and forth. And my mom was like, are you sure? And so we stayed in Maui, and I went to HSDB. We were roommates, yes. So I was 9. Imagine I was 9. I was living in the dorm. I wouldn't see my parents for, I don't know,
1
a
week,
week.
right?
Yeah.
1 week.
Or so. Or we didn't have the weekends back then.
Just
So,
fly home on
Yeah,
holidays,
during that
I think.
time. So I didn't see my parents for how many weeks at a time. So I was only 9, but I wanted to stay there and be with. And in the dorm, there was like bad influences and all the stuff going on in high school and drugs, people getting involved and all the K drama, all the drama at 9. I would see that. So, but it did expose me to what I want because of the institute, and I felt proud of my identity, and it really went up during that time. Capital D, deaf, and for me, like when I went back to the hearing, there was no way for me to go back to the mainstream school and not fit in. So I didn't want to be just alone, and I wanted to be in the institute and be around deaf people. And yeah, of course, having a deaf teacher like Steve, and they would be signing, and if the signer is not good, I wouldn't really pay attention. I wouldn't understand my homework, the lesson, because the teacher wouldn't be signing great, and then there's no facial expressions. I wouldn't pay attention and miss out on a lot of things. So, but with the deaf school, like Colleen right here, she was. Oh, this is your new name sign, but imagine she was the teacher. I really looked up to her, not only to my deaf parents, but as well. I have like a bigger family. Like with my teachers, made me feel like I belong and I can do anything. And I felt school was my family. So all of that made me that I look up to them, and especially in the institute, it changed my life. So yeah, the deaf school.
Wow. Could you repeat the question again? I was so fascinated by her story. What was the question?
So, what is your earliest memory about your deaf identity? Just pick something.
My most memorable memory is when I realized my deaf identity later. I was like 25. I think I was 25 years old when I started learning ASL, and then I tried to immerse myself with the deaf community. I was involved with Angel.
Angel, pay attention.
Angel.
Pay attention.
I joined your deaf basketball team, right? That was part of my trying to learn my deaf identity as a deaf sports person as well. I thought that was cool to learn the language through basketball.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, foul, no. Yeah, that kind of stuff. It was good. So we played with them, and it was really good. Sometimes I didn't always understand it, but we went ahead and played anyway. But at that time, it was my identity. And again, I say around age 25, I finally felt it. But it's better than nothing or never having an identity, right? Okay, now Colleen. During Miss Deaf Hawaii, 1987, I finally had my identity as a deaf woman. It was a small D, yes, but I'm still involved with the deaf community at that time. Puckey Park, I was involved. I really didn't have my identity then. But then Miss Deaf America in 1988 in South Carolina, my family and that really changed my life. My family, my cousins, my aunties, my mother, my father, my roommates, all of that, we went. And it was about 20 people that went there. And that hit me hard because I was not alone. I was not alone. Everybody was the same. Hard of hearing group, total communication group, deaf family. I was like, whoa, I never heard of deaf family. Oh, are you from a deaf family? I was like, huh? What? No, I never even heard of that. Then I started to unpack and realize, wow, I wonder what it's like to have a deaf family. And I kept that in the back of my mind. but then there was hard of hearing people, and I met so many different people, and I just really embraced that. And then I became a capital D. Big D, capital D, means I wanted to do something with my life. I wanted to give back to the children. I don't want them to go through the same thing that I did, trying to learn how to speak and, not having communication with their parents. So my family was all shocked when that all happened. So my family was sitting there and they were clapping, yay, 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 but everybody else was applauding the deaf applause, right? And they're like, what the hell? What is that? No, you got to. And so they were saying, who? And so now when my family comes, they try to communicate with me. It's so touching. I mean, it's small kind, it's manini, but, it's good for them, and it's beautiful that they're trying now. But they're growing, and now they know me, who I am as a deaf person, as a deaf woman. Can I add that your brother now works at the school as security? Yeah, my brother Kurt. I said, come on. So he's security. So I said, why don't you come to the deaf school? And so he's like, I don't know how to communicate. So I had to teach him a little bit of ASL. But yeah, Sean, you've been helping too, teaching him ASL. And so, every day he comes up to me with this, my sister, I am so proud of you. You're amazing. I'm like, what is wrong with you? He's like, I understand now. And I'm like, okay. And I hug him. Yeah. But he comes up to me almost every day. You are awesome. You have communication. I see why it's so hard. And I said, yep, that's what I struggled through. And so now it's so much better. And it was Sean's sister that actually taught him sign.
When I think about myself, my identity as a deaf person, wow, I really want to thank my parents with that. They really made sure when they found out I was deaf, I wasn't left behind, and I learned how to sign. I can't remember what age I was when they learned sign. I just know my mom was signing. I know my mom was learning sign language, and it was hard for me to remember. Maybe it was through Linda, or I don't know how old I was, maybe 3 or 4. Jeff. Around there, I was a toddler.
2. I think you were 2, Linda Lambert is saying.
Or 6.
You would come to the house and I would chat with you.
Yeah. So while I was a toddler, there would be like a variation of words, like on the walls, there would be, everything was labeled, just, we needed to sign everything. That was like the door and the stove and the oven, all over. And my friends would come like, wow, how come you have words all over the place? It's for me. And they're still there. Some, already faded when we became adults. And then my son would still see it. Was that for you when you're little? Because that's how my mom learned my parents learned how to sign, like with the door. You can't enter, you would know the words all over the walls. So in mainstream school in Kona, Waina, there's this little device that I had, and then I hated it. Yep, my cousin would do that, and I hated it because it really shows. It was so obvious that I'm different from everyone else, and it wasn't like I was with them. It was 4 of us. We were separated. Me and my cousin. We felt different, but I wanted to play with them, yes, but I always felt like I couldn't communicate. So I would just stay with my deaf cousin and, our group of 4 deaf people, and we're just together. And we felt different. And then we would go out for summer, and in FLV, and in the deaf school, there would be deaf events like Deaf Santa or spring camp at Kona. And then in Hilo, there was the deaf group there in Waimea. So I really enjoyed that. I wasn't ready to go back to Kona in mainstream school. And then when I was in high school, I was HSDB, my cousin got involved with CPS because the parents, then they moved to the deaf school and they wanted to go. and there would be the two of us in class. So since we're cousins, and then my parents were like, no, we would want to go, but they would tell me, oh, you're too young, and we promised you would go. And then sixth grade happened. I told my parents I want to go to the deaf school, and they were like, no, 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 and I got really pissed off. I really gave my parents a hard time. I don't want to go to school. I'm going to rebel. And that was that time around sixth grade. I felt I didn't really feel proud about my deaf identity, and I felt more hearing. And then when I moved, I felt more proud of myself, more confident in MSD and in the mainland. And then when I came back, I still love my deaf cousins and my family. And of course, there's different sign language here in the island and compared to the mainland. But my parents didn't know how to sign the same way because I grew up with my cousins, and I would compare, and I shouldn't be comparing how they grew up. I would have to remind myself that because they are smart in their own ways. And if they're not good with reading and writing, but they're good with art. I have a cousin who's good with building rock wall with lava and building houses. He can do all sorts of things, and there's specific skills. And in Akamai, they're very proficient. And then in high school, I did feel my identity. Oh, I wanted to add, what does ILC mean? YLC, that's Youth Leadership Camp Conference in Oregon. And I really enjoyed that, going different states, West, Midwest, and East. We'd all come to the camp, and there's 3 deaf people from Hawaii. Sherilyn, am I spelling it right? And Joella. And there was my group that went to YLC, and I felt really overwhelmed. Their signing was different. They were from different regions, Texas, and yeah. Okay, going back to Gisela. So
Want to make a point that YLC is related to it's actually a national organization, and it's a really important organization, agency. It's nationwide. It's really focused on advocacy and deaf rights. So, Brian, okay. Identifying as a deaf person, there's 2 events in my life. One is going into HSDB. I was overwhelmed with the students. They were just like me, but I did fine. And the second thing is I would be called to IP meeting, and my mom would say, you have to come with me. It was 8th grade. Okay. So I went to the IEP meeting, and all these people were at HSDB were adults, and they said that they wanted me to go to Pearl City High School, and they did assessments on me, because I was too smart though for Pearl City High School, so they wanted me to go MSSD. My mom said she freaked out because that's in the East Coast. MSSD is thousands of miles away, so she wanted me to go there. And why don't you say what MSST is? Okay, Model Secondary School for the Deaf. Thank you, Gisela, for telling me that. So anyway, my mom was not happy about that. It's way over by Gallaudet, but I have the aloha spirit in me. I had to say goodbye to my family. I didn't want to, but anyway, I made the trip back to we went to the California West Coast, and my dad was there, and we went ahead and tried co-parenting me, going to California. My mom said, let's try mainstreaming with me. And I really, had been used to a deaf school. So I wasn't quite a big D deaf person yet, I think. I was mainstreamed. I didn't like that. And then I went to Riverside School for the Deaf, where other people had graduated there in my family. And I loved that school. And then, again, my identity wasn't completely big D deaf until I went to go to Gallaudet. And that was an overwhelming experience. However, the surrounding people were signing. And I would say that there was an elitism. and I say that word because, deaf families, and I started to have to ask myself and be introspective and say, what does that mean as a deaf family? Am I elite? Am I, like this upper echelon in the deaf community? Those who went to the deaf schools and signed fluently and that was their first language, where compared to deaf people were mainstream programs. So that was a internal kind of assessment. Then I went to Gallaudet, and I think I really became a big D deaf person. Then with my big D identity, I did have some kind of confrontations with my mom because my mom grew up oral, not signing fluent, and not, in the deaf culture. So that was a little bit of adjustment. At Gallaudet, I was had exposure where my mom did not have that experience. So I realized that, I was ahead of them in some ways. My mom's, she would always, we did mutual respect, and I felt more empowered as a deaf person, and I had to relax a little bit, even though I was kind of, in this new trajectory in my life. So this is kind of my story.
Something to add to with MSD. I did graduate there in DC, and MSD is an international deaf institute that's in DC because in Hawaii there's no. So in Riverside they have that program. They don't have it here. So we were just like playing, and it didn't feel so challenging here until I went to Kalani with you in a mainstream school with other students. We learned math and English, and again, I wasn't satisfied with what I needed. In MSD, there's a Deaf Institute. I wish they would set up set it up here in Hawaii as well. Like, because it is far from the culture. The weather is different, and it's not so aloha. They're not as friendly. So I think the first 3-4 weeks I was really nervous, and I was telling my mom, but then she was telling me just stay and wait. And I fell in love with it later on, and I was involved with water polo, and I really wish the West Side would have it. And after 2 years, my dad was, really, because he didn't want me to disconnect with Kona. And through middle school, I did go to HSDB, and I wanted to go to MSD for middle school, and they told me that I was too far and I was too young. They wanted to make sure I had a good grades, and we had to go to the West Side. And now I'm really thankful for the deaf school because there's a big difference. There's a lot of deaf teachers, and there's more challenging. It's more challenge for the deaf students, not like before. They weren't so good in sign language. I would, depend on the other deaf teachers for that. But now it's gotten a lot better.
Well, thank you so very much, all of you, for sharing your personal experiences. We have learned so much from each one of you.
Yes, everybody learned,
and
right?
hopefully, there will be some
Yes.
people connecting with you. So, everybody, can we give them applause? Thank them. Mhm. So, you guys can make your way down from the stage. Yeah, no need. No worries. Thank you. Yeah, no need. Move the chairs. Okay. So we're a little bit behind schedule. We had technical issues, and the HST is Hawaii Standard Time or Deaf Standard Time. So what we want now, though, is to have Ed Chevy. He will come up and talk about the museum that's in the back of the room. I'm sure most of you have already had some discussion and given not discussion, but been able to read the pictures and see the articles. And there's so much more that he can talk about in ASL. So I'm so sorry, but the performances and all the other stories are, we're going to have to cancel the entertainment because of time. But help yourself if you want to get some water or you want to mingle. And then we're going to have Ed. Are you going to start soon, Ed? Okay. So Ed will be, one interpreter, he'll be in the back. And we'll go ahead and start maybe when he's ready. All right. Thank you. And also just to let you know, I probably won't get on stage again. So I want to thank all of you for coming today for this celebration, for Deaf Celebration and Deaf Awareness Day. Thank you so much. Mahalo. So anybody interested in stories? Yes, please go into the back of the room with Ed.
Inclusive. Just put it. Okay. Yeah. We're already here, right? We're right here.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
English they
Hack. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna turn everything off then. Okay. Okay.